I'm kind of tired of having to reiterate it, because I think at this point people should get the reason why it's not like white, cis, hetero men matter, right? Like there's a reason why that doesn't have to be said. Can we agree on that?
What's cis mean?
Oh, cis, right? So that's cisgendered, which means that the gender that you were assigned at birth matches your sex, right? So not trans, not genderqueer. There's a reason we don't say that. There's a reason why it's Black Lives Matter. And people who don't get that, that's part of the work. I'm realizing more and more that that is not part of my work. That is not my gift. My gift is not to speak to that group of folks. We honestly don't really relate mostly, but there's also, like I spoke about earlier, a place that I feel like a lot of folks that take that approach need to be spoken to that I don't have. I don't encompass that in my body, right? I'm not able to speak to someone about white privilege from a white privilege stance. And sometimes that's how they need to hear it. So that's the work of people that, you know, we call allies, some people call them co-conspirators, but other folks who believe that Black Lives Matter, that do this work, that advance that messaging, that advance that framework, that advance that idea and that vision of the world, to go out and speak to those people. But there are certain things that we can do along the way. I'll give you a prime example. I was in a meeting space about 2 weeks ago where we were doing a screening for a film on Jordan Davis. How many of you know the name Jordan Davis? Okay. So Jordan Davis was a 17-year-old young black kid who got killed by a vigilante named Michael Dunn in Florida. I think it was in 2012 for his music being too loud, right? So we were screening this film and we were talking about how do we utilize this as a cultural shifting tool? How do we utilize this in movement spaces? How do we make sure that when it's presented, people are learning from it and we're actually gaining real takeaways from it? And one of the people that I was in the meeting with was actually, you know, of the ilk that you described, right? Like an older white gentleman, businessman, that he proclaimed this several times. He wanted to make sure that we knew he was a businessman. And when we started to talk about solutions, yeah, he was very clear. When we started to talk about solutions and what it looks like, he did the call that we've heard since August 9th, right? Like, where's the leader? Where's the young black leader? Where's the person at the top? And I kid you not, he physically made a triangle with his hands. I was like, where's the person at the top? And used the word trickle down. And I'm like, are you really utilizing this idea, this language in a black liberation space, right? So I had to have a gentle conversation with him about how his framework is exactly what we're fighting against, right? Like the hierarchy, that system that always places someone at the top has historically and always placed us at the bottom. So why would we replicate that in our spaces? Why would we look to have one figure, which is usually a male cisgendered figure, at the head when we know that that model doesn't work, right? So we talked about reshaping, we talked about reframing, and I told him, let's think of concentric circles maybe. Maybe that's a little better. And at the end of the meeting, I won't say that his mind was completely shifted because I don't know that man, I don't know how he moves throughout the world. But I will say that the conversation we had in that space, I could see a little bit of movement, right? Like he reiterated the circular idea to me. He reiterated the fact that he understood that maybe a hierarchy wasn't the best way to structure our organizations that we're building to try to fight the hierarchy of American imperialism, right? So a lot of it really is just conversation. Conversation from people such as myself that are directly affected, but also conversation from people that aren't directly affected but really get it. I think that's where it has to start. And then as far as the next step for explaining, once again, why Black Lives Matter is so important, why all lives matter is not a thing, like flat out. If you really believe that all lives matter, right, and you look around and you're honest with yourself about the state of America, about the state of the world, you have to realize that everything says Black lives don't matter, right? So that's a necessary call. And until Black Lives Matter is a thing, until Black Lives Matter is a reality, until the world that we're envisioning, until the world that we're actually creating with the way that we move about and claiming our power and claiming our space is an actuality, then all lives matter is not a real thing, right? Like, if Black lives don't matter, then all lives don't matter. So if you do believe that all lives matter, then you'll fight for Black lives. Does that make sense?
What I would add to that, thank you. What I would add to that is that white supremacy is really traumatizing. It's really traumatizing for anyone who lives inside of it. It's a traumatizing system. And I think that to me, the big thing of hearing people come back with like, well, all lives matter, it shows how, like when something's traumatizing, dissociation is common. You're like, I don't want to feel this, I'm going to numb myself to it, I'm going to not see it. And so I think then you don't want to see that something is particularly happening, that there's a genocidal state happening all around you that you're participating in. You don't want to see that, like if you can't do anything about it, you don't see yourself as being able to have power in that. So for me, when people come back and they're like, well, all lives matter, then for me the question is, so then within that, do you think that's true right now? Do you think all lives really matter right now? Is there anything that's missing inside of that? And usually if we follow that rabbit hole down far enough, there's a moment of like, oh geez, God, these numbers for Black people are really fucking bad. Like, oh yeah, right? And not just Black folks, indigenous folks in this country, Arab folks in this country, Asian folks in this country. I mean, there's so much that's happening. And there has been so much conversation. It's not about, again, it's not like we want to counter hierarchical X, right? It's not like we want to get to the Depression Olympics, right? It's like, this is the worst. But there is something about being able to say, in this country, at this moment, there is a condition where every 28 hours a Black person is being shot by the state. So that's a unique condition of this moment. And that in this moment, in this country, our economic condition as Black people is worse than it was during Jim Crow and worse than it was during slavery, which is unbelievable to have to like say that out loud and be like, wait, if you look at our numbers of our health care, of our health and how we are dying, if you look at our numbers for going through college, if you look at the numbers of our lifespan, we're actually doing worse now. Black people are doing worse now. So then it becomes, and that's not the case for other groups who have come to this country, right? You don't look at Irish people and they're like, it's just been a steady decline, y'all Irish people. No, right? If you're Irish, it's gone pretty well. It's just like, anyway, we could do that whole thing about the path toward whiteness and whiteness being health and all that. There's a whole other journey that I'm sure this conference has already done. But I do think that there's a loving way to have the conversation, though, that is like, the reason you're asking this question is because you're so traumatized by the conditions that you can't see it. I'm going to help you see it. It's going to fucking hurt. But I'm going to help you see it if that's your work. If it's not your work, you send them to Catalyst. I think Catalyst is doing great work. This has been my thing, because like I said, I've been in the movement for 18 years, and for the first 6, I was down to have this conversation with white people about Black-only spaces or people of color-only spaces, or just building solidarity at that level and building out from that place. And where is white folks' place in that? And I think I did really good work during that time, and then I just got tired of it because I felt like it was decentralizing my work and my personhood. And so I'm so grateful that Ann Brady's program, particularly at Catalyst, is a 18-month program of a history of whiteness, a history of white supremacy, a history of what's going on that's specifically by and for white folks to decolonize your minds, right? And then you get to intern in a position where you're taking leadership from people of color. So it's gentle, hey, practice this, try it out, and then you move out into the world, right? And I think that's the thing, is giving it enough time. I also think that we get really, it's easy to be righteous and to be like, look, white folks, you just need to get it. It's not all lives matter. And it's just like, well, okay, if you're even asking the question, you need to begin probably an 18-month transformational process. And so I'll have a conversation with you, but I do think it's important. I say Catalyst a million times when I talk to white folks about white things, because I think there's resources. I'm not one of them. And I think that's a boundary that more and more people of color and activists of color get the right to say, because more and more white folks are stepping up and taking responsibility for their work. I'm so happy about that. It makes me really happy.